All rise. The Lawyer of the Apes is now in session. How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 3 of Lawyer of the Apes. Today, we're going to be talking about Citadel versus SEC. Now, this action is not a trial. I've seen a lot of posts online saying that this is a trial. It's not a trial. This is a hearing, an oral argument that is going to take place before the United States Court of Appeals on October 25th. So let's get into a little bit of background on this Citadel versus the SEC action. Let's see, why is Citadel suing the SEC? So I was doing some research on this and looking into everything, and I looked into some of my fellow colleague lawyers. I found one group of lawyers called Crow and Cushion that basically, helped explain everything. And basically, this all started because of a desire by the SEC to limit the ability of high frequency, high speed traders like Citadel. So there's an organization known as the IEX, which is the Investors Exchange, LLC. Now they have a mission, and their mission is to protect investors, institutional and individual investors alike, from what's called latency arbitrage, a strategy that's practiced by high-speed trading firms like Citadel. Latency arbitrage basically is a strategy that's utilized by Citadel and other companies that have money. They basically have a ton of money, and they're able to invest in high-speed infrastructure, and they're able to, game the system, get these algos, and they're able to use their technology to help predict price changes and leverage that against small latency advantages, and trade opportunistically against stale quotes. So, for example, say a stock price is in the process of increasing by a penny across different exchanges. With this advantage, the technology gives them the ability of a higher speed trader to buy at the lower price from an investor who doesn't have the tools to change their quote fast enough and sell at a higher price, and in this case, by 1 penny. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but when you're dealing in millions and millions of shares, obviously that price has a big impact. And the crazy thing about it is that this takes place in literally 300 microseconds. That is a fraction of time. It's even shorter than batting your eyelashes. So basically what IEX set up and the SEC approved is what's called a delimit order. And basically the delimit order acts as a speed bump. It will prevent the ability of this type of practice to take place. And basically the SEC approved this. They said that, yes, we agree. On March 27, 2020, they instituted their initial proceedings to determine whether or not they should approve or disapprove the use of the delimit order system. There were 51 comments considered. And at the end of the day, the SEC found that the delimit order was a narrowly tailored means of mitigating the effects of latency arbitrage for long-term investors, and it would protect retail investors. But after it was put into place, Citadel, the high-speed trader, they said that they believe, and you're not going to believe this, guys, they said that they believe that this delimit does not help the retail trader. In fact, it hinders the retail trader. And for this, they gave some really cockamamie analogy. This is what they said in their argument to the SEC as to why they believed this is against the retail trader. They gave an analogy of what's called a cashier conveyor belt analogy. So here it is. To put it in practical terms, imagine a grocery store that has deliberately installed extra long conveyor belts on checkout lines. After you've committed to buy your items at the advertised price by placing them on the belt, the store uses extra time required to traverse the belt to determine whether any item that was available at the same price at competitor stores had sold out. If so, the store's computers quickly raise its own price before your item reaches the cashier. You can either pay the higher price or try to find the items elsewhere. What? What is Citadel even talking about here? They are turning this completely on its head. The purpose of this entire delimit is to prevent Citadel from basically screwing the retail investor. And they come up with this cockamamie analogy to conveyor belts. This is laughable beyond belief. And the SEC ignored it. They said, no, this is being approved. And then what the Citadel did was they were able to take this right to the appellate court. There was no reason for a trial because this was based upon an administrative decision by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So basically, they are able to take this right up to the United States Court of Appeals for an oral argument that will be heard on October 25th. And the court, listen, the reality is it is completely unlikely for the court to overturn this because the standard is so significantly high that it doesn't make any sense. But what really is interesting about this whole entire case is the briefs that were uploaded for the case. So I'm going to show you guys these briefs. So basically the way it works is when an appeal is filed, the appellant, or in this case, the petitioner, Citadel, they would submit their brief. And in their brief, the only part that was really of any relevance was the conveyor belt analogy, which they submitted to the court for consideration, which will be orally argued on October 25th. But other people besides the SEC are allowed to submit briefs to the Court of Appeals. So these briefs are called amicus curiae briefs. And what those words mean, those are fancy Latin words for which translate literally into friends of the court. So basically, certain organizations can write to the court. You have to get permission and say, look, we want to submit a brief on behalf of, some people could have submitted briefs on behalf of Citadel. Nobody did. Surprise, surprise. So the companies in this case did submit briefs on behalf of the support for the Securities and Exchange Commission. And the two companies that did that were a company called Better Markets, Inc., a not-for-profit company, and another not-for-profit company called Healthy Markets. Now, I looked up Better Markets. Better Markets and Healthy Markets are basically not-for-profit advocacy groups that are out there to help get markets, become more transparent and more aware of facts in relation to the downside and detriment to the retail investor that are being perpetrated by a lot of these companies like Citadel. So these guys are basically have been around for decades, and they've always been trying their best to get the markets corrected. They're basically the elder apes before apes was even a thing. So basically, they are the ones that submitted these briefs on behalf of the SEC, saying that no, Citadel is wrong. This has nothing to do with the inability of this to cause harm to the retail investor. The purpose of this is to, in fact, help the retail investor. And I just want to show you guys some of the arguments that were put forth in these briefs, because it really shows you how low companies like Citadel are and how they will just argue nonsensical positions and say that, and make ridiculous claims that something like a delimit order would hurt the retail investor. It's just like a bold-faced lie. So this argument is so interesting. So argument one, Citadel enjoys unfair advantages over other market participants. No shit. We've known that for quite a while now, and I just love that it's coming out in legal documents like this. It really shows you how long Citadel has been holding the reins in this regard and how ridiculous it is. Number two, high-frequency trading firms rely upon an incomplete and inaccurate national best bid offer, the official benchmark for securities pricing. What important consequence of this market fragmentation, and particularly the different regulatory treatment of different venues to which orders may be routed, is that despite its name, the national best bid offer is not necessarily the actual best prevailing price for a particular stock. And that has to do with the fact specifically that these algos are able to game the system. Firms like Citadel profit from the latency caused by market fragmentation at the expense of actual investors. That's us, the retail investor. The retail investor is harmed significantly, and Citadel takes our money and puts it in their pockets because of these types of latency arbitrages. The unavoidable delay between the moment an order is transmitted to a public exchange, and the moment that order is reflected in the national best bid offer provides a nearly certain profit opportunity for any traders, high frequency traders, that are able to access pricing data faster than the data is reflected in the consolidated data feed and accordingly national best bid offer. Again, this shows that they are able to use their wealth. They're able to basically, here's how it is. They take our money to make more money. They use that money to buy sophisticated high-speed systems to take more of our money so they can make even more money. It's completely ridiculous. And this really fleshes all of it out. I'm not going to read the entire brief. I just want to point out some of the, really juicy parts. Another thing they mentioned, high frequency traders rely on informational and technological strategies to gain advantage. Again, that's a little repetitive. We've already said that. We know that they're using money to buy technology that allows them to game the system even further. So best markets here, they really went all out, better markets, I'm sorry, they went all out and submitted this amicus brief to the court, and they will not be permitted and given time to make an oral argument at the United States Court of Appeals. It's usually done on submission. It's possible that the court might grant them some time, maybe a couple of minutes, but it's unlikely. Usually, if you submit an amicus brief, you don't get to orally argue. You just get to submit your papers. And then let's just take a brief look at healthy markets, their submission to the Court of Appeals. They say some pretty interesting stuff as well in regards to Citadel and Citadel strategies. Just give me 1 second to get you the part that I want to point out to you. I believe it's on page 10 that I wanted to show you. That was the most important part of this brief. Oh, here we go. Yes. So here we go. As market maker, Citadel Securities doesn't trade on behalf of retail investors. So basically, again, Citadel is claiming in their brief that they're doing this because they trade on behalf of the retail investor, which is absolute bullshit. Throughout its brief, Citadel Securities repeatedly complains the definition of latency arbitrage is nebulous. Nebulous is a fancy word for unclear. But it really isn't necessary for IEX, the SEC, or the court to define latency arbitrage with precision here, even though they pretty much do. Instead, it's simply enough to understand how Citadel Securities actually makes money from so-called retail orders. As mentioned, Citadel Securities repeatedly asserts it is trading on behalf of retail investors. Citadel's CEO testified his firm executes more trades on behalf of retail investors than any other firm. But that is wrong, because Citadel is a market maker. Not only does Citadel Securities have no customers or contractual relationship with brokers, retail clients, they have no communication with them either. Instead, Citadel Securities purchase retail order flow from brokers, and other than in order to buy or sell stock, no personal identifying information from the broker is shared with Citadel on those stock orders. And rather than being on the same side of the transaction as a retail customer, Citadel Securities pays for the privilege of having the opportunity to trade against retail orders. Brokers such as Robinhood and Charles Schwab are the ones who have actual relationships with the customers. This is important for two reasons. One, Citadel keeps saying that they were the only broker that was still allowing trades to go through after January 27th. That is a complete line of nonsense based upon what's submitted in these papers. Plus, mentioning Robinhood in this brief, it just shows you that how deep, if it is true, the allegations are in regards to conspiracy are, because Citadel really has no control over anything. So they really needed to reach out to a company like Robinhood in order to exert their control even further. So again, guys, this is a really important brief. So I'm not going to go through all the pages. They're both about 40 pages each, but these are the most important parts. And I really implore you, if you can, to read these briefs. They're readily available on the internet. I will post them in full on the page, but I really suggest you read them. It's a really interesting idea about how Citadel works, and it really introduces you to how long this has been pretty much going on with Citadel. And the scary part is how long there's been a blind eye to it all. So what's the next step? All right, so like I said, all the briefs have been filed. So right now, we're just waiting for October 25th and that's when the oral argument will take place. And as usual, just like any typical court hearing, it'll probably take about 60 days for the Court of Appeals to hand down a decision. But again, I wouldn't worry too much about it. This is something that is unlikely to be overturned by the court. It just doesn't, these aren't the types of things get overturned by a Court of Appeals. The purpose of the Securities and Exchange Commission is to create this type of policy. And unless this policy that they come up with is so not narrowly tailored, then there's no way that the Court of Appeals is going to overturn it. So I hope you really enjoyed the video in regards to Citadel versus SEC. As I posted earlier in the day, there are a lot of other lawsuits pending against Robinhood, but my original intention today was to take a deep dive into the motion to dismiss and the opposition papers on the short squeeze litigation. But I wanted to get to this part today because this was really a hot topic on Twitter today. But tomorrow I will take a deep dive into the motion practice on the short squeeze litigation. So anyway, for now, guys, have a great start to the weekend. Cheers to you all. Wishing everyone a great time, and try to get some rest and relaxation and get ready for Monday. And then until I talk to you again, guys, keep following on Twitter. Please subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Hit the like button if you enjoy the video. Feel free to ask any questions at any time, either in the comments on YouTube, shoot me a DM on Twitter. I'm always available, even if it's not public. If you want to ask me a private question, you can. And for now, the Lawyer of the Apes is adjourned.